Book Empathy Presence. The last thing the deep-sea cable told me. A deep-sea dread story. Written by Creepy NoSleep. Narrated by Maxwell Armstrong. Intro. The email came in at 3:17 a.m. Subject line: static from the bottom of the world. It was from a woman named Lori. She said she'd found my request for accounts on a forum for telecom engineers, the kind of place I spend most of my nights now. She said she had a recording, but that I wouldn't believe where it was captured. She was right. I get a lot of messages. People hear things in the white noise between radio stations, or catch half a sentence on a dead landline. I understand that. I've spent a long time listening to that static myself. It's why I do this. There's a truth in the hum, a pattern in the distortion that everyone else tunes out. But Lori's story was different. It wasn't a random whisper in the noise. It was a clear signal, purposefully broadcast from a place no signal should be. She was a deep-sea cable technician. Her job was to ride a submersible down to the seabed of the Mariana Trench, to the very deepest, darkest run of fiber optic cable on the planet. That cable is the backbone of the internet, a silent pipe for data, for cat videos and stock trades. It shouldn't carry anything else. But during a solo maintenance dive, running a diagnostic, she tapped into an audio feed. Not data. Sound. A perfect real-time broadcast of a house. A specific house. Her childhood home. That detail is what made me stop. It's always the personal frequency, the one that seems tuned just for you. The one that plays the song you can't forget, or the voice you can't find anymore. For Lori, it was the sound of a life that never was, growing louder and more desperate from a place 7 miles underwater. She was hearing ghosts, but they weren't from the past. They were being generated, live from a home that doesn't exist, on a line that should only carry silence. It's the clearest signal I've ever been sent. And the deepest. It makes you wonder what else is down there in the dark, speaking on lines we thought we owned. This is the account of Lori. The last thing the deep-sea cable told me. The suit was my second skin. I knew the hiss of the rebreather, the constant low hum of the life support pack, the way the reinforced joints sighed with every movement. I was a deep-sea cable technician, and the deep current, my surface vessel, was a speck of dust on a wet pane of glass 7 miles above me. Down here, in the crushing eternal dark of the Challenger Deep, I was alone. And that was how I preferred it. The job was simple, in theory. A section of the Trans-Pacific TRIDENT 7 fiber optic cable had reported a signal degradation anomaly. A glitch in the data flow. My task was to descend in the armored ADS atmospheric diving suit, a kind of personal submarine shaped like a man, find the flagged section and run diagnostics. Maybe a pressure fault in the sheath, maybe a curious shark that bit harder than it should. It was maintenance. Mundane. The descent was a slow, controlled fall into nothing. The last shards of sunlight vanished within minutes. Then it was just the glow of my suit's external lights, carving a small, lonely cave of visibility in the infinite black. The comms were a thin, crackly thread to the world above. Sarah, my topside coordinator, was my only tether. Lori, descent profile is nominal. Pressure equalization, holding steady. You're a rock star. Sarah's voice was calm, professional. We'd done this a dozen times. Just not quite this deep. Copy, deep current. Beginning visual sweep for the cable marker. My own voice sounded metallic inside the helmet. I found it an hour later. The cable wasn't some skinny wire. It was as thick as my forearm, a black serpent of armored glass and steel laid across the silty ocean floor. It was the only human thing in this alien landscape. I followed the line of it with my lights, the beam skittering over its textured surface. Then I saw the marker, a blinking green LED band clamped to the cable, placed by a previous remote survey bot. This was the spot. I clamped my suit's magnetic boots onto the cable and got to work. The routine was meditative. I unsealed the access panel on my chest, pulling out the diagnostic leads. The world shrank to the rhythmic tasks: connect the interface coupler, initiate the handshake protocol, run the signal integrity suite. The hum of my suit and the soft digital chimes from my internal display were the only sounds. The abyss around me was perfectly, utterly silent. A silence so complete it had weight. The first anomaly wasn't a sound. It was a feeling. As the diagnostic suite booted up, a shiver went through me. Not a cold shiver, the suit's thermal regulation was flawless, but a psychic flinch, like the moment before you remember a forgotten nightmare. I blinked, my fingers pausing over the touchpad projected on my faceplate. Sarah. You getting anything odd on your end? From the trunk line? A pause, filled with the faint hiss of the carrier wave. Negative, Lori. Trident 7 is reporting standard low-level traffic. You're showing a minor latency spike in the affected segment, but that's the anomaly we're here for. Why? I shook my head, the motion feeling too loud in the stillness. Nothing. Just a twinge. Proceeding with the deep-level scan. Copy. We're watching your vitals. All green. I initiated the deep scan. This was a more invasive probe, sending pattern test pulses down the cable to pinpoint the exact location and nature of the fault. As the process began, the feeling returned. Stronger this time. It was a pressure behind my eyes, a sudden, vivid recollection of the smell of ozone after a summer storm. I hadn't smelled that in years. My childhood home, the porch after a rain. The memory was so sharp and unexpected, it felt like a physical intrusion. The scan finished. The results on my display were confusing. The fault wasn't a break or a crush. The diagnostics indicated a massive, persistent data burden on the line. A continuous, immense upload of information, piggybacking on our cables, originating from a point along the seabed to the west. The bandwidth it was consuming was staggering. It wasn't corrupting our data, it was just sharing the pipe. A silent, screaming river of raw information flowing alongside the cat videos and stock trades and love letters of the world. Deep current, I've got something weird here. The fault's not physical. There's a parasitic signal. Enormous bandwidth. Origin point is off the chart to my west. Can you confirm? A longer pause this time. I could hear muted conversation in the background. Sarah's voice came back tighter. We see it, Lori. It's new. Not on any of the schematics. The source is registering on long-range sonar as a geological formation. A seamount, maybe. But it wasn't there last month. A seamount that transmits data. Right. What's the content? Can you intercept a packet? Trying. It's encrypted in a format we've never seen. The pattern is repetitive. Almost waveform-like. Stand by. While I waited, I looked west into the blackness beyond my lights. Nothing. Just the void. But the feeling persisted. The ozone smell was gone, replaced by a metallic taste on my tongue, like biting aluminum foil. I ran my tongue over my teeth, confused. Sarah's voice crackled, strained. Lori, we got a fragment. It's not data. Not in any normal sense. It's a recording. Of a neural pattern. It's just a loop. A single sustained event. What kind of event? We can't interpret it. The raw output is causing glitches in our decryption AI. It's like it's self-referential code. It describes a state of being. A single moment of perception. Over and over. Perception of what? Another pause. Of pressure. Immense, uniform pressure. And dissolution. A chill that had nothing to do with the ocean depths settled in my gut. Dissolution. The pattern maps to a catastrophic failure of somatic integrity. A coming apart. But it's not a memory of an event. It's the event itself. Sustained. Continuous. It's happening now in this signal. Lori, I think you should abort. Couple the repair bot and come up. We can remote pilot it. Protocol screamed at me to agree. But something else, a stubborn curiosity mixed with that strange, invasive feeling, held me fast. The signal was here. I was here. I had the tools to take a direct sample, to plug my suit's systems directly into the cable and read the raw feed. It was the quickest way to get a clear answer. Negative, Sarah. I'm going to take a direct tap. I need to see this for myself. Maybe the translation layer is screwing it up. Lori, do not do that. That is an order. Your biosigns are already showing elevated stress markers. Abort the dive. I'll be quick. 30 seconds. Lori, out. I muted the channel. I knew I'd catch hell later, but later was 7 miles away. Now was here in the dark with this mystery. I pulled a secondary, hardwired probe from my toolkit, a simple transducer meant to listen to the physical vibrations of the cable. I jacked it into my suit's auxiliary input. The moment the connection was made, the world changed. The silent scream wasn't a sound. It was a direct overwrite. My vision whited out. Not with light, but with a pure sensation of cold. Not the cold of water, but the cold of absolute zero, of the void between stars. It was a cold that was also a color, a blinding, painful silver white. And with it came the knowledge, absolute and immediate, of scale. I was not a person. I was a continent. I was a vast breathing mass of stone and sediment and slow tectonic flesh. I was anchored to the world's bones, and I was in agony. A specific, exquisite agony, the feeling of my own body, my immense planetary body, being slowly, meticulously, atom by atom pulled apart. Not torn. Unmade. The pressure was not around me, it was me, and it was failing. I was a scream given form, a single eternal moment of catastrophic, infinite dissolution. And I was alone. So utterly, profoundly alone that the concept of other was a forgotten myth. The probe fell from my numb fingers, the connection breaking. I gasped, a raw animal sound in the confines of my helmet. I was back in the suit, on the cable, in the dark. But I wasn't the same. The memory of the cold, of the scale, was etched into me. It wasn't a memory I recalled, it was a memory that was. As fundamental as knowing my own name. Which, for a terrifying second, I didn't. Panic, hot and human, flooded me. Sarah. Sarah, do you read? Static. Then a broken, distant whisper. Lori, signal, you. Get out. I fumbled for the main comms control. My hands were shaking. The suit's internal display was flickering, numbers and letters melting into strange, angular glyphs before resolving back into English. The scream was in the system. It was bleeding through the cable, through my tap, into my suit's electronics. Into me. I had to move. I had to get off the cable. I disengaged the magnetic boots, pushing off with a jolt of my thrusters. I floated a few meters above the seabed, my lights swinging wildly. They caught the cable, snaking away into the darkness east and west. And to the west they caught something else. The silt of the ocean floor wasn't flat. I'd thought it was. But now, with my perception altered, I saw the gentle, regular undulation. Like the rise and fall of a sleeping giant's ribs. It was too large, too gradual to have noticed before. But it was there. And it led west, towards the sonar ghost Sarah called a seamount. My thrusters were at half power, a safety precaution to prevent runaway ascents. I could go up, or I could go along the cable line. Going up meant hours of decompression, trapped in the suit with that thing in my head. The cold, dissolving feeling was a background hum now, a new layer of my reality. I needed to understand. I needed to see the source. Maybe then it would stop. Maybe then I could claw my own mind back. I'm investigating the source, I transmitted, my voice strangely calm. West along the cable line. Sarah's response was a garble of panic and static. I stopped listening. I oriented myself and began to move, following the cable, following the gentle breathing rise and fall of the seabed beneath me. The journey was a descent into madness measured in meters. The deeper I went along the trench, the stronger the background hum became. It started overriding smaller things. The taste of my nutrient tube shifted from bland paste to the taste of chalk and brine. The readouts on my faceplate would sometimes show my name as a string of those jagged glyphs. I found myself humming a tune I'd never heard, a low, droning atonal thing that vibrated in my teeth. And I began to remember things that never happened. The crushing weight of millennia of sediment. The slow, delicious fracture of a continental plate. The birth of a hydrothermal vent, a searing joyful pain. These memories were more vivid than my own. My childhood birthday parties faded, replaced by the memory of a great, slow shift that birthed a chain of submarine volcanoes. Which one was real? Both felt real. The human memories felt like paper, thin and fading. After an hour of travel, the seabed began to change. The silt gave way to outcroppings of dark, glassy rock. The cable was no longer lying on the bottom, it was embedded in it. As if the rock had flowed around it, holding it in a gentle, firm grasp. My sonar, a narrow forward beam, started painting a return. It wasn't a seamount. It was a wall. A curved, organic wall that filled the entire western scan. I slowed, my heart thudding against my ribs. I adjusted the sonar to a wider scan. The return resolved, and my blood turned to ice. It wasn't a wall. It was a limb. A vast, curved, ridge-like limb, larger than a skyscraper, lying against the trench wall. And the cable ran right up to it, disappearing into the rock-like flesh. My lights traced its form. The surface wasn't stone. It was a hide of layered, sedimentary plate, crusted with millennia of mineral deposits and slow-growing bioluminescent fungi that pulsed with a faint, sickly green light. And it moved. Not much. A gentle, rhythmic contraction, so slow it was almost imperceptible. A breath that took minutes to complete. The sonar map built on my display, a grotesque sketch. The limb connected to a larger body, a mound of impossible scale that was fused with the very crust of the trench. The thing was the size of a city. And the cable wasn't just near it. Dozens of cables, old and new, cut across its back, its sides, vanishing into its mass. We hadn't laid our communications grid across the ocean floor. We'd stitched it into the skin of a sleeping god. The silent scream wasn't a transmission. It was a vital sign. A continuous, real-time broadcast of its perpetual state of unmaking. It wasn't crying for help. It was simply being in agony. And we had plugged our global nervous system directly into its wound. I hung there, suspended, a mote of dust before a breathing mountain. The overwrite became a flood. The human part of me, Laurie the technician, was a small, shrinking island in a sea of ancient geological despair. I felt my fingers inside the suit, but I also felt the immense, slow flow of magma deep beneath the crust. I knew the desperate need to surface, to breathe air, and I knew the profound, eternal desire to sink, to return to the hot, dark mantle from which this thing had been torn. A new signal cut through the scream. Weak human. It was Sarah, on a secured, low-frequency backup channel. Laurie, if you can hear this, the signal, it's not just on TRIDENT7. It's back propagating. It's in the network. Every cable that touches that thing is carrying it. Reports are coming in, from coastal stations. Unexplained fugue states. People remembering being deep underwater. Remembering falling apart. Her voice was breaking. They're calling it a mass psychogenic event. A meme. They don't know. Laurie, you have to sever the cable. You have to stop the signal at its source. Sever the cable. The thought was ludicrous. The cable was armored steel. My tools were for diagnostics, not demolition. But I had the suit's manipulators. I had emergency cutting charges for freeing myself from entanglement. 2 small shaped explosives. Maybe if I placed them right at the point where the cable entered the creature's flesh, maybe I could blow it loose. It was a suicide mission. Even if the blast didn't rupture my suit, the shockwave in this pressure would turn me to paste. And it would wake the thing. Truly wake it. But the scream was in my head. It was becoming my only head. Lori was a story I'd once read. Soon, I would only be the memory of pressure and cold and coming apart. And soon, so would everyone connected to the global net. We were giving it a voice. We were amplifying its eternal silent scream into the mind of the world. I moved. There was no courage in it. It was the last spasm of a drowning creature. I guided the suit down, landing softly on the creature's hide near the cable insertion point. The skin was warm through my manipulator's sensors. I moved with a strange dual awareness, the careful, precise movements of a technician planting a charge, and the vast, indifferent knowledge of a mountain aware of a microbe on its flank. I placed the first charge, magnetizing it to the cable. I placed the second just beside it for good measure. My hands worked automatically. Inside, I was unraveling. I remembered my first kiss, and I remembered the first time a hydrothermal vent spewed its mineral wealth into the void, and I could not tell which was more precious. I set the timer. 10 seconds. I pushed off, thrusters at full reverse, shooting backwards away from the creature, away from the cable, up into the open water of the trench. The charges detonated. The water did not boom. It hardened. A solid wall of force hit me. My world became a car crash of light and noise as my suit's systems screamed alarms. Torsion warnings, pressure spikes, hull integrity alerts. I was tumbling end over end through the blackness. Something cracked in my leg, a suit joint or my own bone. I didn't know. When the chaos settled, I was drifting, spinning slowly. My lights were out. My main power was dead. Only the emergency bioluminescent strips on my suit cast a feeble green glow. I used the manual controls to stop my spin. I looked back. Where the cable had been, there was a cloud of swirling sediment and debris. A deep raw gash was visible in the creature's hide, oozing a thick phosphorescent fluid that lit the water in eerie pulsating blue. The creature had stirred. The entire trench wall seemed to shift, a slow seismic shrug. A sound reached me, not through the water, but through the suit's contact with the shifting pressure waves, a deep groaning tear, like a continent yawning. But the scream in my head was gone. The silent data scream had vanished, cut off at the source. In its place was a ringing human silence, and a pain that was entirely my own. And a new sound. A low building rumble, not of sound, but of intent. A wave of pure, ancient attention. It had noticed the pinprick. It had noticed the severing of its unwanted voice box. And now it was turning its mind, vast and slow and cold, toward the irritant. Toward me. My thrusters were dead. My comms were dead. I was adrift in the absolute dark, 7 miles down with a broken suit and a broken leg, in the focused gaze of a city-sized being that knew I was here. The surface was impossible. I had minutes of air left in the emergency scrubbers. The deep current would never find me. I was already a ghost. But I was Lori again. The overwrite was fading, leaving only the scars. I remembered Sarah's voice. I remembered the taste of coffee. I remembered the fear of deep water on my first training dive. They were my memories. Thin, fragile, human. And they were mine. As the water around me began to grow colder, a purposeful drawing in of cold that had nothing to do with currents, I did the only thing I could do. I found the manual release for my external data logger. A hardened drive that recorded every suit metric, every sonar ping, every comms fragment. I pulled it from its housing. It was a small, black rectangle. I held it in my manipulator claw. The creature's attention was a physical pressure now, a cold spot in the center of my being. The bioluminescent ooze from its wound was spreading, lighting the abyss in a widening pool of blue. In that light, I saw other shapes. Things that moved in the periphery, drawn to the wound. Things that were not fish. I activated the logger's emergency beacon. A weak repeating pulse of light and RF. It would last for years. Maybe no one would ever come this deep to find it. Maybe they would. I let it go. It drifted away from me, a tiny sinking star. The cold closed in. Not the scream's cold of dissolution, but a simpler, more final cold. The cold of the deep sea, claiming what was always its own. The last thing I felt, before the pressure and the dark took everything else, was a faint, distant tremor through the water. A new signal. Not a scream. Something slower. Something like a question. And it was searching, not along the severed cables, but out here in the open, endless dark. Searching for the source of the pain. It was a question I would not be around to answer. But the black box, with its record of the scream and the silence that followed, was still sinking. And somewhere far above, Sarah was listening to static, and the world was forgetting a nightmare it never knew it had. For now. Outro. Lori's last email was a single line, "It's quieter now." Her company listed her as taking an indefinite medical leave. The number I have for her no longer accepts calls. A signal that isn't a sound. A message that unwrites the person receiving it. They found a way to send a scream through a wire. I think about the final transmission from my brother's dive. The one they called a glitch. I've listened to it. I know it's not. We lay these lines across the ocean floor, thinking we're connecting the world. We never stop to think what might already be clinging to them, or what might use them to find us. We just send our voices into the dark, and wait for something to send its voice back. Next, a naval sonar operator on a classified deep Pacific submarine run begins picking up a signal at extreme depth, a repeating pattern the ship's AI identifies as a human heartbeat, broadcasting from a location where no human could survive.